Hi everyone, this is A Call to Israel. My name is John Clark, and I'll be doing this lesson on the fourth part of the belief cycle, wisdom. Objective: given a classroom environment, we're going to cover the Hebrew word chokmah, or wisdom. We're going to cover wisdom versus knowledge, connect the old with the new, cycle of a man, amunah, shumar, and wisdom, or being on guard, verses in usage, and our goal as Israel. All right, so throughout this presentation or lesson, we're going to see three words being used a lot, all revolving around wisdom, being wise, or a wise person. And at the root, we have this word haham. And if I were to really summarize it so that we could understand it, it would be someone who loves wisdom. And as we read scripture, you're going to see that being expressed, a lover of wisdom. And then we have another word here. You can see how it's wise, wise man. And you can tell, it says its root word is that previous word, a lover of wisdom. And this is like an adjective. And it would be describing someone who is wise. That's what this word is. Which gets us to our word that I'm going to put in that fourth part of our belief cycle, which is wisdom. Or it's actually the very essence of something you get from being a wise person. So as we move forward in our teaching, understand that that is what that last part of the cycle is. Something that is tangible, something that you can see, that is noticeable. All right, so we have those three Hebrew words that relate to wisdom, but what does wisdom mean? In its original text, when the authors were writing the scripture, what did they mean when they wrote that word wisdom? And it may seem like a simple question. You can just go on your phone, look up wisdom definition, and then Google will give you the answer. The problem is, much of the words we have today are just a Hellenized version of something more ancient. And like I've said before, during the Nimrod event, or after the Nimrod event, Yahovah separated the people and he gave them all languages. And that's a very key element. He gave them the languages. In almost every single language, at least all the ones that I know of that came from this Nimrod event, were all in pictographic script. They are all pictures. You look at Chinese Mandarin, Egyptian, Hebrew, which we're about to cover right now, even the Native Americans, they all had some type of picture language. And when we find out what wisdom really means, and as we review scripture, just have on one side the Hellenized definition, and on the other side the ancient definition. And you're going to realize that as you're reading scripture, it really can change how you hear, how you shema what is being said. And I'm doing all this because it's going to really help us draw a better idea of this belief cycle and this last part, chokmah, wisdom, this tangible thing that we can actually see and what it means to us. Let's take a look at the Ancient Hebrew Research Center. I love to read this and really see like how the pictographic script had so much more weight, and I thought it was just more complete. But wisdom. So the parent root, ham, meaning heat, is the root for the word hakam, which means wisdom. That is that one, a wise person. The word ham appears as that symbol. Its original pictographic script. The letter is a picture of a wall which separates one side from another. And the letter there, the water, is a picture of water. Combined, these two letters literally mean separate water. When heat, or ham, is applied to water, we have evaporation, or a separating of water. So notice how in the word heat, you have water and a wall, and it's basically just showing you how it's a complete, right? You apply heat to water, and it creates a wall, a separation. The following Hebrew words are all derived from the parent root ham. Take a look at all the words on the left. Those are all Hebrew, and you can notice how they all connect. They all kind of have the same connecting letters. And on the right, the Hellenized words, I would call them, or the worldly words, they have nothing to do with one another. Skin bag, cheese, sun, to shake, to crave or desire, to sour. While we can plainly see the root ham at the beginning of each of these words, or heat, right? What we may not be as plainly seen is how the meanings of each of these words are related. So soured milk was placed in a skin bag that was set out in the heat of the sun and shaken. The natural enzymes of the skin bag causes the water to separate from the milk, forming the delicacy cheese. Very cool little thing of how all the words kind of relate to each other. So what does this have to do with wisdom, or hakam? Hakam is related to the idea of separating, as the word means one who is able to separate between what is good and bad. So go ahead and take out your phone, look up wisdom, and see what the definition gives you, and you may find discern, but for the most part, it's going to completely leave out one who is able to separate between good and bad. And just by me saying that, if you know Scripture, you go know there's a lot of Scripture that speak about this without even saying wisdom. This one word can be translated as either skill when applied to a craftsman, or as wise when applied to a leader or counselor. We'll take a look. And now send me a man of skillful, that's that hakam, to work in gold. Provide for yourselves wise, or hakam, men, and understanding and knowing of your tribes, and I will set them as rulers over you. A verse found in the book of Isaiah has a very interesting connection between cheese and wisdom. And he will eat cheese and honey to know to reject the bad and choose the good. So he's eating something, and with it, he's going to be able to separate between good and bad. And as we move forward, when we really get an idea of what this wisdom is and why it's so important for us and why we should be working towards it, we're going to recognize that being able to discern between good and bad is what all of the Torah is trying to teach us. Understanding. The Hebrew word for understanding is tavun, comes from the verbal root bin, meaning to understand. But the deeper meaning of the word can be found in a related verbal root, bana, which means to build. In order to build or construct something, we must have the ability to plan and understand the processes needed. This is the idea behind the verb bin and its derivative noun tavun, to be able to discern the processes of construction. So, you can see how wisdom has a lot of depth. It is being able to discern between good and bad. And that takes practice, which is something that we have to understand in terms of wisdom or being wise. All right, so now we're going to get into knowledge. And the reason why I wanted to include knowledge is so that you can see the clear and distinct differences given the ancient Hebrew between wisdom and knowledge. Because as we move later on into the definitions, we're going to start to see them kind of get pushed together. Because Hebrew and wisdom, you need practice. But for knowledge, you really don't need that. It's just observation. Let's take a look. The Hebrew word for knowledge is da'eth, which is derived from the parent root da. The name of the Hebrew letter, that little thing there, is dalet, from the Hebrew word delet, meaning door. This letter was originally written as that picture in an ancient pictographic script and is a picture of a tent door. In a previous discussion, we learned that this letter meant to hang, as the door hung down from the roof of the tent. Each Hebrew letter has more than one meaning, and this letter can also mean back and forth, or in and out movement, as the door is used for moving in and out of the tent. The name for the Hebrew letter, that little Y there, is ayin, from the Hebrew word ayin meaning I. This letter was originally written as an I in the ancient pictographic script and is a picture of an eye. When these two letters are combined, the Hebrew root day is formed, meaning a back and forth movement of the eye. When something is carefully examined, one moves the eye back and forth to take in the whole of what is being examined. In the ancient Hebrew mind, this careful examination is understood as knowledge and experience on an intimate level. And that's so true. You can, by observing something, you know that it's there. Do you know, or yada, the balancings of the clouds, the wondrous works of complete knowledge? And that's Job 37:16. The verb, that you see right there, is derived out of the parent root and carries the same meaning of an intimate knowledge. The verb is commonly used in reference to the marital relations of a husband and wife. And Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain. Do you know God, is the question he asks. Not in a casual sense of awareness, as implied in the English sense of knowledge, but in a close and intimate relationship. And those knowing your character will trust in you, for you will not leave those seeking Yahovah, or Yah. Psalm 9:11. God certainly knows us in this manner. Will not God search this? For he knows the servants of his heart. This is Psalm 44:21. Do we know God in this same manner? Do we know the heart of God? And by this we may be sure that we know him, if we shamar his commandments. This is 1 John 2:3. The above verse is being translated from a Western perspective, talking about a worldly perspective or even a Hellenized perspective. But if we translate it through the mind of the Hebrews, we get a slightly different perspective. And by this, we may be sure that we have an intimate relationship with him if we preserve his directions. And what's so cool, right? So if you're in this video, the previous one was on Shamar, which is the third step to the cycle of belief. And it meant to guard something with your life. In this Hebrew, ancient Hebrew, he's saying that word Shamar means to preserve. And if you think about, say, like salt, which is used to preserve a lot of things, what is the salt doing that's preserving whatever it is it's preserving? It's keeping it from corruption. And really, it's in that sense, that's what we are doing. We have to preserve whatever it is we are guarding. We are guarding it with our life. Derived from the parent root da is the noun daeth, meaning knowledge. The Hebrew word for knowledge is daeth, a noun derived from the verb root yada, meaning to know. The idea of knowing in ancient Hebrew thought is similar to our understanding of knowing, but is more personal and intimate. We may say that we know someone by simply mean we know of his or her existence. But in Hebrew thought, one can only know someone if they have a personal and intimate relationship. In Genesis 18:19, God says about Abraham, I know him, meaning he has a very close relationship with Abraham. In Genesis 4:1, it says that Adam knew Eve, his wife, applying a very an intimate sexual relationship. Knowledge is the intimate ability to perform a specific task or function. This can be seen in Exodus chapter 31, where God has given men the ability to build the various furnishings of the tabernacle. And I would think of knowledge as you're reading something, like you're reading instructions. And now that you've read the instructions, you have knowledge on how to build something. But wisdom is more of actually building it. That is something, because you're actually gaining that wisdom by putting it into practice. So now we're going to jump forward in time to 1828, and we're going to see if the definitions change that much. So for wisdom, the right use or exercise of knowledge, the choice of laudable ends, and of the best means to accomplish them. This is wisdom in act, effect, or practice. If wisdom is to be considered the faculty of the mind, it is the faculty of discerning or judging what is most just, proper, and useful. And if it is to be considered as an acquirement, it is the knowledge and use of what is best, most just, most proper, most conducive to prosperity or happiness. Wisdom in the first sense, or practical wisdom, is nearly synonymous with discretion. Very true. Being able to discern what is right and what is wrong, what is good and what is bad. We'll just read a little bit more at the bottom. Wisdom gained by experience is of inattestable value. Very true. And let's look at knowledge. A clear and certain perception of that which exists, or the truth and fact. The perception of the connection and agreement or disagreement and repugnancy of our ideas. We can have no knowledge of that which does not exist. God has a perfect knowledge of all his works. Human knowledge is very limited and is mostly gained by observation and experience. Observation being the big one, right? Because we're looking. Learning, illumination of the mind. Ignorance is a curse of God. Knowledge, the wing wherewith we fly to heaven. And then we have 3, skill as a knowledge of seamanship. And again, when they start saying like knowledge is gained by doing stuff, they're really starting to mix wisdom and knowledge together. Wisdom is something we get from experience, where knowledge is something we get, we read it. And it's not necessarily we've done anything, it's just observation. And then we'll go to Merriam-Webster, that's today's definitions. The ability to discern inner qualities and relationships, insight. Good sense of judgment. Generally accepted belief. Adding, that's not really where we were going at. Accumulated philosophical and scientific learning. And see how we're starting to mix knowledge and wisdom together. A wise attitude, belief, or course of action. And the teachings of ancient wise men. And that would not be wisdom, in my opinion. Wisdom would be able to discern whether or not the ancient wise men's teachings are right or wrong. Knowledge, the fact or condition of knowing something with familiarity gained through experience or association. And that's where we start seeing these words being mixed together. Something gained through experience or actually doing something is wisdom. Knowledge would just be observing. Maybe you observed a party, so you knew the party actually happened. You read the scriptures, and it says stuff. You have gained knowledge in what it said. You read a command of God. You have just gained knowledge of what that command is. But there is no wisdom until you start to put it into practice, and that is really what I'm trying to drive at when it comes to this word wisdom. But you can see how over time we have really fallen away from a really complete understanding of what Scripture is. And hopefully as we go through the verses, you can apply this better idea of what this word is to the Scripture and use it. And all that is going to be wisdom to you. You're going and it's going to increase your knowledge as you read. So, in that, hopefully you guys have the wisdom to be able to separate, right, knowledge and wisdom. And we'll be able to better understand the scripture we're about to go through. But the usage of Hokmah, Haham, and Hakam. Proverbs 9, 8-9. And I doubled up each of the verses so you can kind of compare what the verse is saying and then what it is with the Hebrew. So do not reprove a scoffer, lest he hate you. Reprove a wise one, and he loves you. So that wise one right there is someone who has wisdom. Give instruction to a wise one, and he is wiser still. teach a righteous one, and he increases in learning. So give instruction to someone who is wise, and he will love wisdom even more. Teach a righteous one, and he increases in learning. And this word righteous is another word that deserves a review in and of itself. It's not someone I want to be right or wrong, and it could be thought of as someone who just wants to do what is right, but really I think it's a better as in someone who loves the truth. And in that sense, they are going to want to do what is right. And this is, and he will increase in learning. Proverbs 10:10. The fear of Yahovah is the beginning of wisdom. That's our word we're looking at, Hokmah. And the knowledge, or da'ath, of the set apart one is understanding. Now take a look at the Hebrew, or with the Hebrew words in there. The fear of Yahovah is the beginning of Hokmah. Now that's not the love of wisdom. That's not of being wise. This is something tangible. And the only way to gain this tangible thing is through experience. You have to actually be doing stuff. And then it goes into the next part, and the knowledge of the kadosh, or the set apart, is understanding. And if you've seen the video on kadosh and what it really means, we know that all of the Torah of Yahovah teaches us how to be kadosh. So what this is really saying is the knowledge of what sets us apart is understanding. And it's so cool because the fear of Yahovah, if you fear him, you want to learn how he wants you to live. You're going to learn the set apart. And when you learn the set apart, what are you going to start to do? Just like inside this belief cycle, you're going to start to change. And in that change, when you start to shamar the commands, we are going to gain this wisdom. And that's why it's the beginning of wisdom. The fear of Yahovah is the beginning of wisdom. You're going to start to do things differently. Proverbs 13:1. A wise son accepts his father's discipline, but a scoffer shall not listen to rebuke. And so we see here the Hakam, son, Shemaz, hears objectively his father's discipline, but a scoffer shall not shema to rebuke. And some of these words are a little weird, but you can take 13:1 and compare it to 9:8. And discipline doesn't necessarily have to mean like a slap on the wrist. It could just be him instructing you to do something better. I used to train martial arts. I still do, but I used to do it, on a daily basis. And as I'm hitting the bag or training, I'd have a coach, and he'd come up to me and he's like, "Hey, you're doing this good, but you could twist, you could turn into your punch a little bit more, whatever the thing is." And I could have looked at him and been like, "Get out of here, I know what I'm doing." Or I could say, "Hey, thank you for that," and start to put whatever it is he told me I need to practice into what I'm doing. And that really is what those two verses are getting at. A scoffer, not necessarily, or not someone that's like, yelling at somebody or saying that somebody's wrong, but somebody that's like turning his nose to direction, doesn't want to hear what someone else has to say about anything. So, Hokmah and Saphia. As we go through the scripture, we have the Old and New Testament, and what I like to do is to connect them. I like to say, well, when these Greek authors, when they were writing the Greek translations or their Greek letters, they would refer to the Hebrew. So what Hebrew word did they refer to? And what I like to do is find that connecting verse where the Greek authors were quoting the New Testament. So 1 Kings 10:24. And all the earth sought the presence of Solomon to hear his wisdom, which Elohim had put in his heart. Now this particular wisdom, what is it? So if we can recall that other word for a wise person, if he's a craftsman, that wisdom is going to be seen in his work. However, if you're a ruler, where is your work going to be seen? In the people you rule over. This is what they came to hear. Luke 11:31. And the sovereigness of the south shall rise up in the judgment, talking about the second resurrection, with the men of this generation, and shall condemn them. She came from the ends of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon. And look, a greater than Solomon is here. So you can see how Hokmah is that Sophia is the word that this gospel is using to relay to Hokmah in the Old Testament. And then we have 1 Kings 10:4. And the sovereigness of Sheba saw all the Hokmah, or all the wisdom of Solomon, in the house that he had built. And we're going to cover this in the next slide. Yeah, I wanted to go over this because there's a lot of foreshadowing to the reign, or the millennial reign to come. And the sovereigness of Sheba saw all the wisdom of Solomon and the house that he had built. Now we know that right now the Father is collecting the resources for Yeshua, Messiah, to build his house, just like David collected all the resources for Solomon to build his. And the food at his table, and the seating of his servants, and the service of his waiters in their attire, and his cupbearers in their burnt offerings which he offered in the house of Yahovah, and there was no more spirit in her. Now everything that she saw, that there was no more spirit in her, could have been related to the millennial reign. Everything mentioned in Revelation is all referencing all of that verse. Then she said to the sovereign, the word I heard in my own land about your words and your wisdom was true. But I did not believe the words until I came and saw with my own eyes. Very, very peculiar words. What does Yeshua Messiah said? He says, blessed are those who see, who believe without seeing. And that is going to be one of the key things that make us Israel, or make us part of the millennial reign. When we show that we believe, even though we haven't seen any of the works. And see, I have not been told the half. Your wisdom and prosperity exceed the report which I have heard. Blessed are your men, and blessed are these your servants, who stand continually before you, who are shamaring your Hokmah, your wisdom, which is exactly what we're going to do. We're going to listen to the wisdom of Yeshua Messiah during the millennial reign. We will not break covenant. Blessed be Yahovah your Elohim, who delighted in you, to put you on the throne of Israel, because Yahovah has loved Israel forever. Therefore, he made you sovereign to do right ruling and righteousness. All those bolded areas, all pointing to Yeshua, all pointing to the millennial reign. And she gave the sovereign 120 talents of gold, and very many spices and precious stones. Never again did so many spices come as the sovereigness of Sheba gave to sovereign Solomon. And Sheba, even though she just gave him all this stuff, did not make it into the millennial reign. We know this from that previous verse, when she is going to rise or be resurrected during the second judgment. And I just want to bring that out. We can't pay to enter into the millennial reign. We can't give anything to Yahovah that he can't have for himself. The only thing he wants out of us, and I would say this, is wisdom. And that's Hokmah. That's why it's the target for the cycle of belief. So Hokmah, this is Exodus 28:3. And you speak to all the wise of heart, wise men, whom I have filled with the spirit of wisdom, and they shall make the garments of Aaron to set him apart, to Kadash him, for him to serve as priest to me. And what's so cool about this verse, when you understand the difference between wisdom and wise men. Wisdom, like I've said before, is something that we gain over time. Now, as a martial artist, you know how I gained a lot of my wisdom? By getting punched in the face. And it's not something that I enjoyed or I loved, but it does make you learn. Our mistakes are going to help us learn, especially if we're not a scoffer, if we turn our hand to our teacher, or turn our face to our teacher. If that is something, that is wisdom, that heat, right? That our ability to be able to discern between good and bad, to make the right and wrong decisions. So crucial to our walk. And here, in this verse, Yahovah is giving these people this thing. I mean, for 5 years, I would spar and I'd get punched in the face, or I'd get hit, or I'd make a mistake, I'd get tapped out. And I had to build that up over 5 years. And I can only imagine if I could just have all that given to me without having to experience the 5 years of getting punched in the face. I'm working on a chair and I'm putting it all together. I come to the last part and I'm like, I messed up. I should have measured this differently. You know, those mistakes that you learn by actually doing the craftsmanship and the skill, Yahovah just gave them, which is an incredible, you might miss it when you read this verse. And I have filled him with the spirit of Elohim in wisdom and in understanding and in knowledge and in all work. Again, just showing you that Yahovah is literally giving these people something that takes years and years of experience. And when is this happening? When is this happening? This is happening right after they pass through the Red Sea, they receive their baptism, right after they're given the set apart commands. They receive this. This is one of the gifts that we are going to receive when we enter into the millennial reign. I'm not talking about gifts of like riches, but like wisdom. Years and years and years of experience. And we're all going to get it through Yeshua Messiah. Deuteronomy 4 and 6. Shamar and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding before the eyes of the peoples who shema all these laws, who hear all these laws. And they shall say, only a hakam and understanding people is this great nation. And that's exactly what we are going to be in the future. And notice how if we actually shamar, giving something that we actually have to do, we have to shamar the commands, it's going to be our wisdom. That is what we're going to get. It's something tangible. So Job 12 and 13 are the two verses, but let's read the beginning of this. I love this part of Job. A lamp is despised in the thought of one who is at ease. And this is someone who's not nasaring. That's the next word review and the part of the cycle of belief. Nasar. Prepared for those whose feet slip. The tents of robbers are at peace, and those who provoke El are complacent to him whom bring Aloha into his hand. And again, this is talking about people who are at rest, who are complacent, who are quote unquote asleep. But now ask the beasts, and they teach you, and the birds of the heavens, and they declare it to you. Speak to the earth, and it teaches you, and the fish of the sea inform you. Who among you, all these does not know that the hand of Yahovah has done this? In whose hand is the life of all that live, and the breath of all mankind? Does the ear not try words, and the mouth taste food for itself? In the very beginning of each one of my lessons, I always make it a point to say, given a classroom environment. I don't want you to just hear what I'm saying and take it as the truth. I'd rather you be sitting there with the Bible and maybe pausing this and testing what I have to say. I put a lot of thought into these lessons, but it's really important that you guys test everything, that you try the words that you are hearing, just like you would try food. With the aged is Chokmah and understanding with length of days. With him are wisdom and might. He has counsel and understanding. And like I said, the trying of words, being able to know whether or not they are good or bad, is all wisdom. It's something tangible that we can gain. Psalm 107 and 27. There being loathed their being loathed all food. And to me, this is a part that a lot of people come into when they go into the truth movement, as far as like learning about, and this food right here is wisdom. It's very much wisdom. But learning about, say, like military industrial complex, learning about big pharma and the food industry, even injustice, poverty. You learn about all these things and you're like, I don't even want to know about it anymore. And then they drew near to the gates of death and cried out to Yahovah in their distress. He saved them out of their troubles. He sent his word and healed them. Yeshua Messiah. And delivered them from their destructions. Let them give thanks to Yahovah for his kindness and his wonders to the children of men. And let them bring slaughterings and of thanksgiving and relate his works with rejoicing. Those who go down to the sea in ships, and this is talking about people who are experienced with seamanship. It could be used with anything, but he's going to draw off something with this particular group of men that understand seamanship. Doing work in many waters, they see the works of Yahovah and his wonders in the deep. For he commands and raises the stormy wind, which lifts up the waters of the sea. They go up to the heavens, they go down to the depths. Their being is melted because of evil. So as these people who are have wisdom in their profession of seamanship, the storm starts happening, the waves start going all over the place, and before you know it, their wisdom is out the door, and they're just praying for their lives. They reel to and fro, they stagger like a drunkard, and all their wisdom is swallowed up. Then they cry out to Yahovah in their distress, and he brings them out of their troubles. He caused the storm to be still, and that immediately makes me think of Yeshua Messiah, so that the waves were silent, and they rejoice because they are hushed, and he leads them to the haven of their delight. Let them give thanks to Yahovah for his kindness and his wonders to the children of men. He leads them to the haven of their delight. Yeshua Messiah is what's leading us into the millennial reign. He says, follow me. Do the Torah perfectly, just like me. Or at least try to practice it, just like me. All right, so Ecclesiastes 1:13. Now the first, I would say even like the third and fourth time I read this book, I was like, well, what is it that I'm supposed to do? Because it seems like all is just vanity. And then I started looking at some of the finer details, and it all started to be kind of clear. But I set my heart to seek and search out by Hokmah, again, seek out the right and wrong, concerning all, and that's the key word, all, that has been done under the heavens. This evil task Elohim has given to the sons of man to be humbled by it. Then we'll go into 14 to 18. I have seen all the works that are done under the sun, and see all was futile in feeding the wind, feeding on winds. So again, wisdom is something that we can feed on. And it's something that is going to, again, strengthen what we believe. That's how the belief cycle works. And right here he's saying that wisdom as a whole is like feeding on wind. It's like you're not going to gain anything from it. The crooked could not be straightened, and what is lacking could not be counted. So I spoke in my heart, saying, see, I have attained greatness. I have gained more wisdom than all who are before me in Jerusalem. And my heart has seen much wisdom and da'ath. And I set my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. I know that this too is feeding on wind, for in much wisdom is much grief, and he who increases knowledge increases suffering. Just like in the previous thing with the previous slide, they loathed all food. And that's what's happening, that's what happened to me when I first started coming into like seeing the truth, quote unquote the truth. Just seeing some hard realities that we are living in right now. And it was actually Yahovah that saved me from it all. Ecclesiastes 10:10. We're going to read 8:9, and then we'll have 11:12 afterward. He who digs a pit falls into it, and whoever breaks through a wall is bitten by a snake. He who quarries stones is hurt by them. He who splits wood is endangered by it. If an iron tool is blunt and one does not sharpen the edge, then he needs more strength, and wisdom is advantageous to make it right. And then 10 to 11. If the snake bites without enchantment, then the master of the tongue is no better. Meaning if the snake bites without being attacked, then someone who is a master of tongue and just uses it to attack people is no better. Words of a wise man's mouth show favor, but the lips of a fool swallow him up. And then Ecclesiastes 12, 13 to 14. Let us shema the conclusion of the entire matter. Fear Elohim and shamar his commands, for this applies to all mankind. For Elohim shall bring every work into right ruling, including all that is hidden, whether good or whether evil. Wisdom, right? You would miss that last part. It's not talking about anything else. It's talking about wisdom. And the fear of Elohim is what? The beginning of wisdom. And it says, shamar his commands. When I came up with this belief cycle, I wasn't just drawing it out of nowhere. It was a collection of scripture. And this is, Ecclesiastes is one of them where I kind of started putting it all together. But at the end, it says, fear Yahovah and shamar his commands. And his commands are what? The set apart. And it says that the fear of Elohim is the beginning of wisdom. Being able to discern what is good and what is evil. And then what does it say? And the eth, or knowledge, of the set apart is understanding. And it's right here in Ecclesiastes 2. So getting into the New Testament scripture. So again, wherever wisdom is, they were referencing Hokmah in the Old Testament, or that tangible thing that you can get. The son of Adam came eating and drinking, and they say, see a man, a glutton and a wine drinker, a friend and a tax collectors and sinners. And wisdom was declared right by her works. And wisdom was declared right by her works. Let's look at Proverbs 1 and 8. My son, heed the discipline of your father, and do not forsake the Torah of your mother. And in Matthew 12, 49 to 50. And having stretched out his hand toward his taught ones, he said, see my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the desire of my Father who is in the heavens is my mother and sister and mother. And what I want to kind of bring together for you guys here in the reading of this section of Matthew and the bottom in Proverbs. In Proverbs, there are two women. There's the wisdom, and then there is the harlot. Now, wisdom very much is the mother when Messiah is speaking right here. And if I wanted to even clarify it even more, mother is the very nation Israel. And so what is Israel? Israel is a group of men and women who have striven with the world and with Elohim and have overcome the world. They have discerned, they are wise, and said, Elohim is the right way. And they've chosen his ways over the world's ways. And that collective group of men and women is Israel. It is wisdom. And what was with Yahovah at the very beginning of time? Wisdom. And what's going to be with Yahovah at the very end of time? Wisdom or Israel. And that is, something that you can really draw from these verses. Understand that it's a group that has done the right things. And in it, we have gained something. It's something very important, very rare to Yahovah that we can provide for him. And it has to do with our choices. Let's continue to read. So Corinthians 1, 17 and 19. For Messiah did not send me to immerse, but to bring the good news, not with wisdom of words, that the stake of Messiah should not be nullified. For the word of the stake is indeed foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved from the second judgment, right? We enter into the millennial reign. We have no place with the second judgment or the second resurrection. It is the power of Elohim. For it has been written, I shall destroy the wisdom of the wise and set aside the learning of the learned ones. And the wisdom that it's talking about right here is wisdom of the world, not wisdom that we are actually looking for, that Yahovah is looking for us to gain. That would be silly. And when it's talking about the Christ crucified, it's talking about his death. And we said it before, how the death of Messiah is foolishness to a Greek and is a stumbling block to a Jew. A Jew, because they thought, because of their bloodline, they were somehow just guaranteed to enter into the reign. Whereas a Greek would look at someone dying as just as foolishness. But we look at it as being the wisdom of Elohim, knowing that his death stood for the release of Israel. And it allowed for the Gentiles to be a part of his nation again. And now Jew and Gentile can both be a part of Israel. In the slide with Ecclesiastes and in the last slide, it almost talks about wisdom in a bad light. But we know that when Paul and the author of Ecclesiastes were writing, they were speaking about worldly wisdom. What is right and wrong according to the world. And they speak very bad against that type of wisdom. But then they go and revert us back to fearing Elohim and the wisdom gained by that. And that is actually something that we can look at as being very valuable. James 1:5. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of Elohim, who gives to all generously and without reproach, and it shall be given to him. And then James 1:6. But he should ask in amunah, not doubting, for he who doubts is like a wave of the sea driven and tossed by the wind. And that's 3 times now. 3 times where the sea being tossed by the wind comes up. And it's attached with wisdom. Israel. We strive with the world and with Elohim, and we overcome the world. And what he's talking about right now, this sea driven and tossed by the wind, is talking about the world. But more specifically, it's talking about people being tossed to and fro in every which direction. But we stand on the rock, right? And when he is saying here, but he should ask in amunah, what he's saying is he should ask with the resolve of wanting to do the commands of Yahovah. Do not turn back to the world. If you really want wisdom, shamar the commands and ask Yahovah. Ask Yahovah for that wisdom. And Yahovah will give it to you. But that's what it said. That's what it said throughout all of Scripture. The fear of Yahovah is what? The beginning of wisdom. Something tangible that we can have. And of course, the knowledge of the set apart of the commands is right understanding. And then James 3:12-18. My brothers, is a fig tree able to bear olives, or a grapevine figs? So neither is a fountain able to make salt and sweet water. Who is wise and understanding among you? Let him show by his good behavior his works in meekness of wisdom. But if you have bitter jealousy and self-seeking in your hearts, do not boast against and lie against the truth. This is not wisdom coming down from above, but is earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. For where jealousy and self-seeking are, there is confusion in every foul deed. But the wisdom from above is first clean, then peaceable, gentle, ready to obey, filled with compassion and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. And the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. And what I want to draw from this is that fruit. Throughout this whole presentation, what I really wanted to draw and bring us to is the understanding that the Chokmah that Yahovah wants us to have is something tangible. It's a fruit. And that's what Yahovah really likes out of us. He doesn't care about money. He doesn't care about how wealthy we make ourselves in this world. All the gains that we have, just like in Ecclesiastes, that is all vanity. That's all something gained from covetousness. But it's the obeying and the shemaring of the commands of Elohim and the fruit that we gain out of that Yahovah or Elohim likes. And in it, and from that, we can draw from this parable of the sower. He began to teach again by the sea, and a large crowd was gathered to him, so that he entered into a boat to sit in the sea, and all the crowd was on the land facing the sea. And he taught them much in parables, and said to them in his teaching, Listen, see, a sower went out to sow, and it came to be, as he sowed, some fell by the wayside, and the birds of the heaven came and devoured it. And other fell on rocky places, where it had not much soil, and immediately it sprung up, because it had no depth of soil. And when the sun was up, it was scorched, and because it had no root, it withered away. And other fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked it, and it yielded no crop. And the other fell on good soil, and yielded a crop that came up, grew and yielded a crop, some 30-fold, and some 60, and some 100. There's that wisdom. And he said to them, He who has ears, let them hear. He who has ears to Shema, let him Shema. And when he was alone, those about him with the 12 asked him about the parable. What's so cool about this? It just says, He who has ears to Shema, let him Shema. And then, so there's a huge group of people around. He just gives this parable. And then there's only a group that are around him and his disciples. They stick around. They're like, explain it to us. And everyone else left. And he said to them, To you it has been given to know the secret of the reign of Elohim, but to those who are outside, all are done in parables, so that seeing they see but do not perceive, and shemaing, hearing, they shema but do not understand, lest they should turn from their sins and be forgiven them. And he said to them, Do you not understand this parable? How then shall you understand all the parables? The sower sows the word. And when you think of the word, you could also look at it as being command. They go interchangeably. These then are the ones by the wayside where the word is sown, and when they hear, Satan comes immediately and takes away the word that was sown in their hearts. And likewise, these are the ones sown on rocky places who, when they shema or hear the word, immediately receive it with joy. And they have no root in themselves, but are short-lived. Then when pressure or persecution arises because of the word, immediately they stumble. The others are sown among thorns. These are they who shema the word, and the worries of this age, and the deceit of riches, and the desire for other matters, entering in, choke the word, and it becomes fruitless. And those sown on good soil are those who shema the word and accept it, and bear fruit, some 30-fold, and some 60, and some 100. And drawing from that parable of the sower, the seed is really just what you believe. It's a knowledge. It's knowledge. When you learn that there is a Yahovah, that there is a Elohim, and that it is Yahovah. Immediately, by believing that or by amending that, you should fall into a state of fear. What does my Creator want out of me? And then you gain a knowledge of what sets us apart. His Word, His Torah. And as you learn it, you're putting seeds on your heart. And if you have a stony heart, you know what's going to happen? That seed is going to be picked up by the devils. It's not going to take any root. Then there's the people that it'll hit, and they don't consider it very important. And then there's the people that it is going to grow, but then the cares, the covetousness of this world is going to stop it from producing anything. It's going to be strangled out. And then there's going to be those who actually let that knowledge sit in their heart, and they're going to start to guard it. They're going to let their amunah change them. Their resolve is going to take effect. They're going to start to shamar the very commands that were given to them by their Elohim. And in doing so, what do they can produce? Fruit. And it's that fruit that Yahovah looks at us and wants. And I wanted to end with this proverb, Proverbs 6:6-8. And the very last part, you won't find it in any other Bible except for the Septuagint, as far as I know of, from all the different ones that I've read. Go to the ant, you lazy one. See her ways and be a lover of wisdom, which, having no commander, overseer, or ruler, provides her supplies in the summer, gathers her food in the harvest. Or go to the bee and see how diligent she is, and how earnestly she is engaged in her work, whose labors kings and private men use for health, and she is desired and respected by all. Though weak in body, she is advanced by honoring wisdom. So again, take a look at this. Imagine us as the bee. And we recognize that we were made in the image of Yeshua Messiah. And Yeshua Messiah walked the Torah perfectly. By his death and resurrection, he condemns sin in the flesh. He says, don't sin. So us, having that fear, what do? We start to do his works. And we have no idea what it does on the spiritual side of things. We just do it. We shamar the Sabbath. We shamar not stealing. We shamar not committing adultery. We shamar not coveting. And we practice. And all we're doing is we're making honey. We're making this spiritual honey that we have no idea what it's doing. And that is valued by Yahovah. That is the hokmah that we try to make in our walk. And it's stuff that we will have no idea what it's going to do for us until we enter into that morning rain. And then that's when we're going to really see and understand everything. And we're going to see the value of what it was to trust in Yahovah our Elohim. So again, thank you for watching. And if you are my brothers and you're watching this, if you're by yourself, again, the whole purpose of this fellowship is for one day to kind of create a safe haven where we can all get together. So whether it be in this life or in the life to come, I hope one day to stand by you and to be with you so we can live our lives in reverence to the Most High. Thank you for watching, and shalom.